Hello and welcome. I'm Sandeep Singh, SVP and General Manager of NetApp Platform at NetApp. Welcome to Architecting Intelligence. This is where we bring together the leaders, influencers, and experts who are shaping what's next across technology and industry. Each episode is a conversation, not a keynote. The goal is to get past the headlines and into what's changing in the market, what's driving it, and what it means for leaders who are making decisions right now. We'll hear from people who are building, running, and scaling real systems, along with voices who see the broader patterns across industries. The common thread is practical insight. What are leaders seeing in the field? What are they prioritizing? What are they learning the hard way? If you're responsible for or interested in strategy, operations, or technology, this series is for you. On today's episode, we're exploring how enterprise data is transforming from static records to a lived memory that reflects an organization's ongoing story. Modern business requires a continuous understanding of past decisions, shifting contexts, and human interactions. We'll dive into what it takes to architect a data foundation capable of storing complex behavioral data to fuel high-fidelity decision simulations. As organizations make this shift, how can they remove the friction caused by lost context, model outcomes based on their unique work styles, and eliminate misalignment? I'm joined by Stuart McClure, CEO of Wethos AI, to unpack these ideas and share insights from the front lines of data innovation. Welcome, Stuart.
Thanks, Sandeep, so much for having me here. Look forward to it.
Well, Stuart, let's open up with a question here. You talk about the shift from a static system of record to something closer to a living memory that carries context forward. What does that shift actually require from the underlying data itself?
Well, we are all used to traditional systems of record, right? Like, human resources or financial data and systems. But no one is really measuring at a quantitative level how we make decisions as an institution or an enterprise. You might have decision intelligence platforms that might record, let's say, a process or a workflow that you can repeat. But nothing actually understands your human decision-making senses and capabilities and infuse that into the future of decision-making for yourself and your enterprise. So that's really what I see as one of the big futures for enterprise AI and how the world uses AI at work.
Yeah, Stuart, the context that you're talking about is incredibly important. Where does that lost context actually cost organizations the most? Is it fragmented systems, disconnected data, or something else entirely?
Well, I actually have a whole Substack dedicated to this one concept, which is the idea of being lonely at the top, right? You and I have shared this experience, I'm sure, many times. You're at the top. You've got to make tough decisions. You have to align your team, your executive team, your SLT, your peers on that decision. You have to build it collaboratively, and then you have to own it. You have to hold yourself and them accountable, and you need to be able to measure its success or failure and then pivot or change or replicate that successful pattern into other decision making. Well, there's nothing that does any of that today. And the lost art of it all is around understanding each individual and their unique perspectives and perception of how the world works and their perception of what success is to them and their team and company. So without measuring that, without understanding it and going deep inside how us as humans behave, how we look at variables that we interact with day to day and then translate that into a pattern of success, If you don't understand that, then you're just mechanizing this old school concretized, almost like decision making of the dinosaurs. You are so reliant on what has happened in the past that predicting your future is just looking in the rearview mirror. You're not able to anticipate the real problems or unanticipated variables that are going to inevitably come up when you make decisions. And let's face it, right? Everything we do all day long is simply making good or bad decisions and hopefully repeating the good and hopefully pivoting quick to fix the bad. And that really is at the heart of every organization. And nothing in AI is addressing that metric yet.
Yeah, Stuart, you talked about this notion of context and decision-making record that can help inform, really predict and simulate, rather than just having a past record. If organizations need a foundation that can hold that kind of complex connected data at scale and still make it usable in real time, what does that actually require?
Well, a number of things. I mean, first of all, you have to have sovereignty of that data, right? As you know, organizations and enterprises, I think some of the metrics that are being published right now, in my personal firsthand experience, are enterprise adoption of AI is maybe in the low to mid single digits. And you can certainly measure that as it pertains to the compute itself, like in terms of enterprise usage of compute. So we can see that a lot of enterprises are stalling, waiting, slowing down, trying to figure it out. And in big part because they are not comfortable giving all of their data to some generalized LLM up into the cloud. And even if it's a private cloud. So they have to control that sovereignty of their data before they're going to feel comfortable sort of opening their decision-making history into that world. So that's first. You've got to have a secure, encrypted, private, safe, and sovereign sort of data store, let's call it, or cloud compute. But after that, now you have to really start to lean into, okay, well, what does AI give you that you need to start to fold in and include? Well, the first, of course, is being able to take in the full context of the scenario or situation or decision that needs to be done inside the organization. And to do that, you have to understand the past. You got to go backwards in time and say, well, of all of our successes, which ones were the result of what kind of decision making? And can we find the unique and complex patterns of that decision making based on the individuals and the team dynamics that occurred, so that we can replicate the positive and the good decisions and then avoid the bad decisions and not repeat the problems of the past. So that's first, is understanding the past. And the only way to do that is to get insight into the workflows and current processes of the organization itself. And that, of course, comes from many different places inside of an organization that you can start to discover and include inside of that system of record. But the second and most important is to move beyond the past patterns of success and move into the brand new problem-solving patterns that you'll be creating together with your team. We all know you can't hold AI accountable for a bad decision. We've learned this many, many countless times inside the world today. AI is going to make a bad decision. It's going to be overgeneralized. It's going to be limited. I mean, I don't know if you saw the whole World Cup, pink boot fiasco. Every single, shoe cleat manufacturer around the world used the same AI predictive report from WGSN out of the UK, and all of those reports said pink was the best color. So there was no coordination whatsoever. It was simply that every shoe manufacturer relied on this one vendor that used all the same generalized AIs to make the prediction and the decision making. So that's not unique. So now you've regressed to the mean for your company. When you start to rely on generalized AI with generalized decision making, you now flatten the curve and you regress. So now there's no distinction between what you do and your competitor whatsoever. So this is really where the magic comes into a system that can think as you, for you, with you, and provide that almost human layer inside the AI, okay? To me, that is the missing component to be able to create the brand new and novel ideation that's got to occur in the future of successful enterprises.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. I actually just got back from Europe, visiting many customers in multiple different countries, and data sovereignty, security, governance of data is absolutely top of mind for customers. Once the foundation exists, how does AI actually turn it into something forward-looking rather than just another place to store history?
That comes into the predictive power of AI. AI is very good at a number of things, right? So, first of all, right now it's very good at autocomplete, right? You can ask it a question and it'll autocomplete the generalized answer for you. And that can be incredibly helpful, certainly on the cold start problem, but also in terms of having a generalized perspective onto a problem and being able to solve for it. But what you really have to do is tap into the minds of your assets, your talents, your resources inside the organization that we all pay really good money for, to tap into their unique perspectives and how they see the world and solve for problems. And then be able to take that pattern and those sequences of pattern almost in a hive mind way, and then iterate on each of these patterns to predict the best, most highly sort of reliable outcome. That's the key. And that's the secret sauce of, I believe, the future of any enterprise or institutional AI, is tapping into that human layer. And the human layer means I got to understand how Sandeep thinks. What's his perspective? Where did he come from? How does he see the world and challenge and conflict and opportunities? And in that combination, that unique combinatorial math of you seeing the world and solving for the problem, I need to replicate that inside of the team's collective decision making to create brand new and novel. Because as you know today, nothing AI produces is novel. By its very definition, AI simply produces what it was trained on. That's it.
Yeah, and to borrow a phrase I think I saw from your website, it's you're talking about going beyond knowledge to really capturing judgment
Yes,
that leaders bring to the
that's right.
table there.
That's right. Right. The
Well,
unique patterns of judgment that every unique leader brings to the problem. And I just talked about this in one of my articles. The Cracker Barrel CEO just left, and a lot of the a lot of the popular narrative was, oh, this is a marketing failure of rebranding their logo, changing their logo last year. And I think that's a safe narrative to play, but I think that only scratches really the surface of the core of the problem. If you look at the broader executive teams in every problem that you see out in the marketplace, what you'll start to see is this collection of like minds that all think sort of generally the same. So when there is a decision to be made, groupthink becomes the dominant bias, which means, of course, you're really not contributing much into that decision-making process at all. You're just sort of deferring to the highest paid officer or the board members or whoever it is, and not really pushing and solving for the problems that need to get solved for to predict the future outcome. And that really, to me, is where the value is going to be in the power of AI.
well, let's come back to this notion of data security and data governance. Data tied to how individual people think and decide is about as sensitive as it gets. Given your background, Stuart, in cybersecurity, how should organizations think about protecting it?
Well, the usual answer is it depends, right? The good consulting answer, at least. And it does depend because it depends on their vertical, right? Are they in a highly regulated market? Are they in a highly regulated country? I mean, take the EU and the EU AI standards or GDPR. You need to take, what they are bound to and compliant towards, and make sure that that's at the heart of the decision making. But if you look at it objectively and say, okay, what are the core foundational, pivot points of discussion and consideration around safety, security, privacy, and sovereignty, et cetera, it's very simple. It's taking the The threats themselves, understanding them completely. There's really only 3 dominant threats out there in the world you can think of it as. There's execution-based attacks, there's identity-based attacks, then there's denial of service-based attacks. And all of the compromising of an enterprise or an enterprise data or in the decision-making scenario all stores into one of those 3 sort of threat surface areas. So when you understand that, now you can start to go layer by layer to understand, okay, well, how can an execution of maliciousness occur? How can an identity be fraudulently or bypassed? And then how can we prevent denial of service attacks from bringing down our availability? And looking at it through, and that's very much the CIA model, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You look at all 3 of those, and inside your world, your environment, your company, you can now start to really be sensitive to all the vectors into this data and then how you control access to that data going out. And that's why access to this level of decision making is going to be really, really critical, and having control over it yourself.
Yeah, I'll underscore, access to that data and decision making becomes critical, and really being able to ensure the security policies of the lineage of data, staying close to the data, even as the data travels, becomes incredibly important.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Let me ask one other question, especially as we think about how should organizations think about trying to scale this across every team, every region, every environment. What does it take to keep that data foundation consistent?
Well, for every team and every organization or group or department, that you start to deploy this sort of human layer of decision intelligence, if you will, you want to make sure that you, of course, have everybody's sort of buy into what's happening here, right? We are coming together to help share our experiences to make our team's decisions better, and ultimately the company's decisions better, to help improve and move forward the enterprise. So to do that, of course, all of that has to be housed in a secure and controllable format for the administrators of the organization and the company itself. You need to be able to have, of course, systems of measure of access and being able to understand exactly how people use what's being quantified and codified inside of that system of record of decision making. And you want to be able to leverage everybody's voice and mind inside that decision making. I always used to say, as a CEO or any leader, do you really care where the best idea comes from? Like, do you really care? That it's from your salesperson, your leader versus your CTO versus your CIO? No, probably not. Like, you just want the best decisions to happen. And so the only way to do that is to pressure test that and simulate those decisions. So getting people comfortable with the idea that we're going to understand how your unique perspectives comes to bear, and we infuse you as the human layer in that decision making. And then we simulate all of those decisions to get you the best outcome, whatever that outcome goal is, and align towards. And that is really, I think, the trick for these new behavioral and cognition platforms that are coming out.
Well, look, we've covered a lot of ground here. When this actually works, and let's talk a little bit about value, what changes for the business? What does eliminating misalignment look like in practice?
Well, it depends on who you ask, right? So if you ask an HR leader, it'll be things like attrition reduction. It'll be onboarding velocity. It depends on the language of the individual. If you're talking about a CIO, you're talking about leveraging technology for greater efficiency, for greater control, for speed of decision making. I think one of the best metrics you can ever measure is decision velocity. As you make decisions as an organization, are you doing it faster or slower with a better outcome? And to measure that really is one of the key foundational principles of any organization, because otherwise it's just black art and magic. Like, oh, I don't know how we made that decision, and we just made it, and it worked. So being able to do all of that, to me, and infuse that in the hands of the enterprise is really the trick. and what we have to orient towards, and looking for those ROI metrics as best you can. I mean, a lot of platforms don't really deliver any ROI. Like ROI is basically made up, as you know, and the goal is, of course, I mean, like try to give me an ROI on, Microsoft Teams. I don't know. Like, how do you give me an ROI on that, right? Give me an ROI on Workday, or these solutions that are ubiquitous, certainly valuable and needed, but where's the ROI on it, right? So what you have to look at it is, and it's not a total cost of ownership or TCO either. You have to look at it as, look, we implement and invest. We then measure the outcomes and of decision making in this scenario. Are those decisions getting us better and faster results or not? And then adjusting for it. And to me, that's the ultimate measure.
Stuart, thank you for a genuinely insightful conversation. A few things stand out to me from today. Data infrastructure has spent decades getting really good at recording what happened. The next phase has to keep the context around it, why it happened, and how people are likely to act. Silos are the real tax on decision making. Until data can move freely and keep its context intact, teams will keep rebuilding the same picture by hand, meeting after meeting. Third, a foundation like this only works when it is unified across environments and trustworthy by default. Resilience needs to be built into the data layer, not bolted on later. Fourth, AI is only as useful as the data underneath it. Give it a connected, current, well-governed foundation, and it can help teams see around corners instead of just reporting what already happened. Next, the organizations pulling ahead are not the ones, actually, collecting the most data. They are the ones who trust their data enough to act on it. Thank you all for joining us on Architecting Intelligence. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, I encourage you to join us at NetApp Insight 2026, where technology leaders, customers, and partners will come together to explore what's next across AI, data, cloud, and cyber resilience. To learn more and register, visit netapp.com/insight. We'll see you next time.